Thank you guys for joining me. The discussion today, it was actually named Indies in Times of COVID, but it was not a good name for what we actually intended to um, talk about here. What we want to talk about today with you is about remote work. Remote work is obviously a trend that existed in our industry even before the pandemic, but obviously accelerated that. Um, After the restrictions of the pandemic ended, it obviously sparked a lot of debate in terms of, is this something viable on the long run? Is this actually a paradigm shift and we have to completely rethink the way we work, or is it just back to square one after the restrictions ended? A lot of very clear opinions on that, a lot of very different ones. So we obviously have those that decided that it's time to come back almost full time. So 4 days, even 3, 4, or even 5 days a week in the office. We also have those that don't have an office anymore. And we still have a lot of people that aren't quite decided on which is the route to go, because there are obviously a lot of advantages to remote work, not only for employees but also for employers. There's also a lot of disadvantages to that. So clearly, we are in times that are changing, and we need to figure out what's going on. I think I chose my panel very well, in the sense that they're also very, very cool guys, but also they're very diverse in the way that they approach indie development, indie studios, but also in the way that they approach remote work. We have Dan Teodorescu from Fortis Game, which is a company that is very proud to be first. Remote first, okay. Then we have Alex Palade from Rikodu, coming from Cluj, the second biggest hub in Romania, who actually has its team back 4 out of 5 days in the office. And we have Dan Dimitrescu from Killhouse Games. They actually don't have an office anymore. However, they're still undecided on the route to go forward. I hope that this panel is going to give him some answers to him, and also maybe to some of you as well. Maybe if you can just say a few words about yourselves and your companies, because I think it's going to be a good starting point towards what are your opinions on remote work in general.
Yeah, I come from Fortis. We define ourselves as a global remote first company. Um, we are around 200 people all over the world, in many continents. And I think there are a lot of learnings that we can share. That's, I think, the point that I can bring, both from what we do in Romania and what we do globally, because we see this as a really big opportunity, and it's a transformational event for the industry. And that's the insight. There are maybe some information, some insights of things that we have done, what has worked, what has been difficult. But clearly, my point of view in the panel is that this is transformational. This is here to stay, and it's an opportunity for many companies. We may not know how to do it yet, but I think that those who learn how to do remote work are going to be are going to have to are going to gain a lot in the future.
Hello, I'm Alex. I come from a studio called Rikodu. We're a pretty tiny organization from Cluj. And
Which we love and appreciate.
Thank you, thank you. We took on a way too big project for the size of our team a few years ago, but we managed to get it out on 3 consoles. Well, 2 out of 3 consoles, and it's coming out on PlayStation hopefully this year. Called Robo Revenge Squad nowadays. It used to be called Secondhand Frankie's Revenge. At some point during the development process after early access, we actually had to diversify and start doing some work for hire for reasons that I'm sure you can all imagine. And yeah, now we're kind of trying to combine the two. We have a very small team. We're 5 people on the core team, but we have a number of close collaborators that we've worked through depending on where we are in the project and what needs to be done. And to follow on Dan's lead, I think my point of view is that hybrid work has always been a part of the industry, actually, and some form of remote work and some form of hybrid collaboration has always been really important because of the challenges in the industry. But to me, having a core team in the office is really important to kind of have a good creative process. And I feel like even though remote is here to stay, it's definitely, the industry is also changing just like all the other industries. There's a place, and I would say a very important place, for having at least a core physical presence somewhere.
Hello, I'm Dan from Killhouse Games. You saw our ad before this panel. We're a very small team, so like 6 people in the office. When we used to have an office, when people used to come to the office, never happens anymore. COVID hit us. I think people say we brought COVID to Romania from the United States. It was fun
I
times.
agree.
Yeah. We like remote work because it gives us freedom, and I guess it also gives us freedom to work with whoever we want from across the globe. So it widens the talent pool, but it creates some challenges. So we're not decided which way is best. Both myself and my co-founder Mihai used to come to the office when nobody else did. Probably because when we worked from home, there were kids running around, pressing keys, creating an obstacle in doing the job. But Mihai also was a very strong proponent of coming to the office. And on the other hand, he enjoyed having an empty office and being able to focus. So
As a
he
programmer.
didn't really want the other people to come to the office anymore. So I don't think he's very decided on that either. So while we are looking for an office to restart our team on site, I'm not sure we will be able to decide on an actual office and say, yeah, this is it, let's do it, let's pull the plug, it also, I think remote work works very well with the indie life, independent life, and being able to answer to no one, work from wherever in the world you want to be. And especially as an entrepreneur, you kind of work 24 hours a day. So it can be in the afternoon in Vienna after visiting something, and it can be somewhere else where you think you are far away from Russian bombs, and your family is more, I don't know, happy about it. And it can also be in the kitchen after the kids are asleep, and you just have to answer one more email, and it makes no difference for some people.
Yeah, but then again, to transition to my first question to you, when you can work 24 hours a day, it also means that you can not work at all for 24 hours a day. And I guess if you don't have some clear set times and some very at least clear tasks per day or something more of a structure, then I think it's very hard to manage the efficiency levels of your team. So that's actually my first point that I wanted to discuss with you guys. What do you think remote work does in terms of efficiency? So we're going to discuss remote work in terms of the efficiency of the team, in terms of team building, in terms of hiring, attracting, and retaining talent, and obviously in terms of work and life balance. So let's start with efficiency. Is this something that can be isn't it the death of efficiency, or is it something that can be quite effective on the long run if you know how to do it?
For me personally, I think at least initially I had, I went down the slope with efficiency. There are a couple of reasons for that. For my own side, because again, it was not just let's switch to remote work, but we were forced into remote work by
The restrictions of the
everything that
pandemic.
happened. For me, it happened while I didn't have a home office anymore, because I had small kids and I'm a huge gamer. I didn't want to game at home anymore, so I don't pull the kids towards screens so much. So when I started working at home, it was on a table on my laptop in the middle of the kitchen, which is not the healthiest environment, especially, and also not the most efficient when you're used to big screens, working on 2 or 3 screens. So I had to come back and okay, let's arrange something around here. Also, I'm not sure if people have when you take the step towards being an entrepreneur and being your own, let's say, boss or master, the first thing that happens in my experience is that everybody in your family will say, "Oh, so you're free to help me with whatever I have."
Anytime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we need to go and do that and that, and you want to do it, but it digs at your work time. And when you take this further and you're at home and working remote, even you do that. I mean, maybe the mechanic will call me and yeah, we need to program to repair your car and everything. What hour do you want to come in? And I don't know.
Anytime.
Exactly, anytime. I'm not even sure what to answer. I can go anytime, and I can schedule anything because I'm at home, and indeed I can work, and I work all the time. So maybe I'm not as disciplined as I should be. Yeah.
You personally, but what about also your team, and then obviously
I mean, I think there are at least 3 big challenges to efficiency at home, and it's definitely possible. But first of all, is the setup that Dan mentioned. So not everyone has the right setup at home, even if they realize that they need one. They might only have the kitchen table to work on, so it's really not great. And this is something that's been discussed, I know, in some of the podcasts I was listening to about this remote work trend. Um, People need bigger places essentially to be able to have an office, and if they don't have an office, then it can be really challenging, even if you are a disciplined person, because there are so many distractions that can kind of interrupt your work. So that would be one big challenge, which I don't know if anyone has an answer to that, honestly, because not everyone, again, I mean, we can talk about our individual setups, and I have an office at home and it's fine, but not everyone does. The second one is a mental kind of mindset, let's say. And I think that there it depends on, like people can sometimes fall into 2 extremes. They can either be like, yeah, I gotta work, but I can do it later. I can do it later. I mean, I remember when I worked from home a long time ago, more than 10 years ago. And I remember clearly that thought of, yeah, I gotta do this today, but first let's get something to eat. But first let's do whatever. But okay, now I gotta go walk the dog or whatever. And in the end, by 7, I was still stressed that I have work to do and started doing some work and then leaving it for the weekend and so on. So depending on how disciplined you are, you can fall into that. Or on the opposite end, you can fall into working nonstop because there's just no boundary. So that's the second big challenge. Like, how do you clearly separate, and can you really separate just mentally, from a mental standpoint? And the third one is really the personality of the people, right? Because as much as we hate to say it, but when people are in the office, the fact that there is some oversight in the sense of just other people being there seeing your screen creates a certain level of responsibility, and
and
people,
accountability.
yeah, and accountability. And I know people hate it. Oh, the boss is looking at my screen, what am I doing? And yeah, it's not like you're being a guard, but just some people need some level of accountability because they're not disciplined enough. It depends on the personality. Some people are disciplined and they can do that. They're super productive, super focused at home because they enjoy doing it, and the lack of distraction kind of just helps, actually, more than hinders. So I think these are kind of 3 big challenges to efficiency that you have when people work from home, and it's definitely a case-by-case situation. That's why I find it's very hard to do something fully remote, for example, unless the right person can work very efficiently from home. But I don't think everyone, without a lot of let's say preconditions. I don't know.
Exactly.
I actually think that the fundamentals are the same. Basically, there's a lot of distraction when you go to work. There's the cigarette break, there's the discussions with others, there's the meetings, there's the going out for lunch, uh, you can get distracted by a lot of things. What I noticed that is indeed a matter of personality, but people tend to behave in very similar ways. The people that can always perform during the day, but then they're super disciplined, and at the end of the day they go home. They did that in the office. They do that in the at home as well. I think we're talking about efficiency. I think things are different. Some things are easier. Some things are harder. For certain disciplines, especially, it's super important for them to have the uninterrupted time to focus, especially to something that has to do with the deep thinking or getting into a certain state. Artists seem to enjoy it. Programmers seem to enjoy it. Some of the design work also, when it doesn't require communication or brainstorming, deep thinking about something, that the uninterrupted time is very valuable, and that works a lot better. Syncing, communication, syncing with each other, communication, those are harder, but something gives, but something is one, right? So what I see is that from us, I come from the production and design track, and then in our case, we need to take more time and think more carefully about what we want to do, about the clarity of what we want to do, and what is the process that we want to implement. And then things are clear for the team, and then each can go and work on what they want to work. So I think when you have remote or hybrid work, things are different, but the fundamentals are the same. But I think it's just the importance, the weight of some of the activities that is a lot different. So a lot more work for the people who coordinate, more clarity, especially when it comes. I don't think there's a lot here, but in our case, there's also time zone difference. When there is a time zone difference, the overlap between the two time zones becomes super important. That part has to be used efficiently. What we see is that people actually understand that, and when you have 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours of collaboration time, people tend to use that very effectively, and then everybody goes and does their work separately. So fundamentals are the same. People are going to work or not work based on visibility, on how much clarity they have, on how they perceive their work. Sometimes, indeed, there are very, very real world situations, like you have kids or you don't have enough room, and those, of course, those are factors. But overall, people tend to behave in the same way, and the problems are the same, just that the weights are different.
Yeah, I want to ask you something, because we talked about this a bit yesterday, about how being remote forces you to kind of be a bit more structured in approach, right? So I think you touched on this just before, saying that, you know, in the production and design track, you have to change a bit the way you do things so that it's clear for everyone. Like if people are working remotely, you have to make sure that the requirements are clear. You can't just kind of wing it and say, hey, this is what we need. But then when the person actually gets to that task, they can just come to you and ask, oh, is this like this or is this like that? So it forces you to be a bit more professional or structured, depending on how you see it, which I think is a very tough transition, actually, if people aren't used to the process. If they are, then of course it's easy, but if not, it's a tough transition. It's a good one in a sense. I mean, I think it's good to be more structured when you in design and production and everything. But I do wonder if it doesn't, for some teams at least, or some people, kind of kill the very hard to define creative vibe or creative kind of magic that you've built as a team. I know it's hard to put into words, but I think you know what I'm trying to describe.
What I see is that it still happens, right? I mean, there is something really cool about spending time together and then gelling as a team. Those are different processes that we can talk about, and that requires extra effort specifically for that. But from what we see, we have teams that have been set up as remote teams, fully remote teams. In Bucharest, we work in our team. We have a hybrid system, and of course, the designers and producers tend to want to come to the office and have those discussions face to face. But I see every day the other teams that have been set up as a remote team, they actually are capable of very creative work. It's just that it actually, as a designer, it is a lot hard because you have to be capable to communicate your thought process in a way that other people can understand it. It's the same. I see this even with like with our art director, who is now building clear processes, tries to put all his mental models in a mirror. He's an artist. That's how he's going, and then communicate it to the team. I see a lot more deliberation in how you communicate your thought process and what needs to be done, or the goals of what you have to do. And then there's also, because communication is deliberate, you actually have to call somebody, or on there, you can't just meet them on the hallway, right, or by their desk. So you actually have to understand, we see the cases of programmers, designers, artists just calling each other and solving this. Other things are easier in some respects, and we get all kinds of new practices. For example, we have a brainstorming meeting. We don't take notes. We just record the meeting, right? And then we can look at it, and then everybody can participate in the discussion. Somebody can then go or all of us can go and look at it again. Or sometimes if we want to show a new design, we just record it, put it on the Slack channel, and then everybody can, in their own time, come and look at the design and come with feedback and start the discussion from there. So there are some things that are actually tools, and they're actually much easier to do, like giving that kind of thought process when I'm brainstorming about something, when I'm trying to show design or a solution, record it, put it there, and everybody can come to the
because you usually don't have the kind of setup in a physical office. You don't have a camera ready just there to record, although it's maybe not such a bad idea, but
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of people actually do it. So I can see that point of some things actually becoming easier in this sense.
But I think, to conclude on efficiency, I think the reason why you're a much stronger advocate than, for example, other indie studios, which are not part of a international group of companies that have a lot of people to do trial and error and create these structures that actually work, and then they come in a way to you as guidance, as a set of rules of things that do work in terms of remote work and efficiency. I think it's harder for the studios that do not have and have to do a lot of trial and error to create a structure and create an actual environment in which remote work is more efficient, or at least as efficient.
I would imagine it's pretty widespread in the indie space, especially small indies, that people kind of work in a much less structured way. So designers, for example, I've worked recently with designers whose design process is to blurt out ideas, and that's obviously not great. But there are people who have really good design feeling, for example, and they have the sense for what's good, what's not. They can do it, but in a way that's very hands-on and sort of communicating directly with people. But that's, in a sense, it's professionalizing people like that. So I think it's a good transition,
Yeah.
but it's yet another challenge,
especially
for
for
the small
co-founders,
indie studios. Yeah.
which are producers, and they are HR, and they are CMO and CTO and all the C's. It's another thing that they have to worry about. And then maybe it would be helpful, for example, Dan, if we can stay a bit on this together in the following weeks, and maybe we can create some guidelines from the things that you've learn from the other studios in your group that make sense for smaller studios in terms of remote, and help the community out.
I think the flexibility has always been, even before COVID, has been a benefit that indies have. Like we could work with people part-time, we could work with people who had flexible schedule. We actually had people who asked us for, like, look, I'm here in the office with you every day, I just need to get some work done. I will work from home for 2 or 3 days a week, and then the output was exceptional even before that. So for some indies, it's not as such a new thing. Um, but what do you do now if some people actually require it? I think it can be a bit threatening, because it can, if somebody can work for anybody in the world, right, it can break the silos, the local pools, right? So it can be a threat, but at the same time, it can be a really good thing, because then you can find the right person for your team, and then you have more flexibility as an indie than some other companies have. So it's just the situation. I think that people who adapt and use it are gonna benefit from this.
Let's go to the second topic that I wanted your opinion on, which is how much remote work actually affects creative work. So, for example, it's a difference when you're just starting a project. It's very different than, for example, where you guys are at now, which is the home run, as you mentioned yesterday. So that's obviously, I mean, the things that they have to do to finish the game, they're clearer than what would happen if they would just go on Door Kickers 3
Yeah, we're.
rampage now. So I think that's a different type of collaboration that's needed.
Definitely, we're not in the stage where everybody, gathers the team and, "Oh, what we're gonna do for the next game." But on the other hand, we're not that kind of company either, I guess. Doorkickers 2 is still being designed as we finished it. So there are features that we have an outline for, but they are not, fully defined on paper, at least. Maybe in my head or something. Yeah. So brainstorming and putting pictures actually on the screen, and seeing them take shape and adjusting them and adapting the design and gameplay. So we're still there, and yeah, it's an issue when you're used to working in an office and maybe discussing around the screen with people. Yeah, exactly. Or how does it play? What do you think of this? Right? It's an issue, and it puts a strain on the designers. I think, at least on me, I'm not used to being as articulate anymore as maybe I was during Ubisoft times. I mean, I don't have to go and pitch to Yves Guillemot anymore, so maybe I don't think it's as vital to be very clear there with some suits in the room. Not that I don't appreciate my people, but they're not as drastic in their feedback. They just say this is stupid and that's it. This will never work. Let's do something else. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's still a challenge, and I guess for I don't hope for sure, but I guess it's even more of a challenge for Alex, because you're working on different projects in different times. I mean,
yeah, kind of. It's not really like that for us, because when the actual pandemic was there and we all worked remote, it was a time where creativity requirement was at the lowest because we were porting the game to Xbox, and we were doing some work for hire on art, which was very clearly defined. So it didn't really require a lot of, it was kind of a live ops thing. So the requirements were very clear. And really, there was very little creativity needed for what we were doing back then. It was more like, as my colleague Radu likes to say, dat cu sapa, which means you just put your head down and do the work. So we kind of skirted that part of it, because when we were all remote, we didn't really have to get into the creative bits. Now we're in the office, and it is a bit interesting. So the project we're working on now is kind of, it's brought together different teams from different places. It's kind of a bigger one, and it's sort of in the creative stages. It's definitely more challenging for us, except the design part is kind of set for the milestone that we're on. So I think again we're kind of skirting the creative part for now. I'm dreading the point where we have to do this remotely, but I hope we won't have to. I hope we'll be able to have at least the core team in the office when we get to it.
But yesterday you said something really interesting, and I would like you to also say it publicly. You said that actually being on site and working together in the same room is a muscle that needs training, and you're kind of working now towards making sure that this muscle isn't. Is there a word, atrophiar? Atrophy.
Yeah.
Once you get there.
Maybe this wasn't public information. No, but the point is, when
but it's true. This is something.
It's something I was actually open to my team about. Most of it is here actually, and when I said we need to get back in the office and we need to start going there like 4 days out of 5, I was very open about the fact that we're not in a creative phase right now, but I can't see us doing the type of creative work we were doing at the beginning of our previous project in a fully remote setup. And yeah, we could come back when we get there, but since that point it's not like, okay, that's in 3 months time or it's in 4 months time. We don't really know because, we're pretty fluid in the work we take on these days. And I feel like, yeah, you can lose a bit of that team chemistry if you don't maintain it, especially if you're going through less creative phases of the project. I mean, if you're creative and remote, then there are challenges. But if you're not creative and remote, or in a non-super creative phase, let's say, I feel like you can. Maybe it's just an unfounded fear, but to me, it's kind of trying to maintain that. And I think I see Dan smiling, so.
Yeah, there's a point of view. When we discuss it in internal, it's like, okay, so we were afraid of this because it's like this dark mass of things that are coming, and I know as a manager, as a designer, as a team lead, I know I'm gonna have to solve them. But I haven't thought about them yet. I haven't I don't feel prepared to tackle them. The reality is that it's just a number of things that you have to solve, and some of them are easier, some of them are harder. But I think many times we don't feel prepared because we don't have the time or the situation in that situation, the deadline, don't have time to do that. But once you sit down and think about them, it's no longer that, right? It's a number of things that you have to be careful about, a number of things that are different, and then it's something that can, once you've done it, it doesn't feel like it's something that
face your
it becomes
fear
clear.
And it takes shape.
I think it's an opportunity to understand something new and grow and use it. That's why I was smiling, because like I felt like that as well. So on the creative track, maybe I can share some things.
Should be mindful of the time. So no, you can just.
So I have been on around the table with other designers for discussion that has rambled on and on and on, and we jumped from one argument to the other, and it was live and very creative, and it was completely
useless.
Not useless, but ineffective, right? So it can happen in real life as well. What I noticed when we work remote on something is that you have to use the right tools. And for example, brainstorming will happen on a tool that allows collaboration. You put a mirror board in front of you, and everybody can start adding things or brainstorming there and adding things on the spot or with things that are being prepared in advance. I think it's a bit easier when you're remote in a meeting, when people kind of know that this is dedicated time for that to stay on track. So I actually find it easier than doing that. Of course, people's personalities are still important, right? So you have to take time to let the introvert actually think, and then maybe not answer on the same moment, and answer when they're ready. Some people tend to take over the discussion. Because we find it so much easier to discuss. But the problems are pretty much the same, again. But if you just have to do it a bit different. I actually find it really, really interesting to create with other people, and in a tool that allows us to work together collaboratively. And then when I don't remember what was discussed, I can take the video recording, look at minute 10, and see what was being discussed.
Can you tell us what tools you use?
we use a lot of Miro. So we at some point we went into like Miro for everything. We're healed for that. We don't try to do planning and HR and everything in Miro. We just do design work. But at some point we went crazy for Miro. When we discovered, you were like, oh my god, what is this cool thing? We're gonna do everything here. But
Okay, something to Google search after this panel, I guess, Miro. Okay, so I'll try to combine the next two subjects because they're kind of talking about the same thing, which is team building, team spirit, and retaining employees and collaborators. I think, in a way, one of the reasons why somebody stays in a team, used to stay in a team, it was because they liked going to the office, they enjoyed the banter there, they enjoyed the people there they were working with. That was one of the reasons why, for example, I loved being at Killhouse, because it was just a great place to be physically there. So um, this is obviously something that you're gonna miss in a way in a remote environment, so in a remote setup. So how do you make sure that you have your team spirit up, that you have the team building whatever exercises, processes that make sense for your team, and that you actually retain your employees? Because now with remote work, people can find, I mean, they can still stay in the same house, they can still have their kids at the same school and work for an employer in I don't know what country, and I don't know what time zone. So it's very easy now for people to change jobs. So how do you retain them? It's easy now, it's going to be easy for you, for example, to obviously hire talent from all over the world. It's also going to be harder to retain talent because they can also work with employers all over the world. So how do you maintain the spirit? What are your thoughts on that, and how do you make sure that your employees and full-time collaborators actually stick together in a remote kind of setting? What do you think on that?
there are
And
quite
that's
a
the
few
last question.
questions here. Like I think people tend to enjoy what they do. Like, do I have meaningful work for me? Am I doing what I want to do? Am I have interesting work? Am I learning something? Is it meaningful? That will have an impact. So that's a basic motivator, right? Am I being treated right? Am I being treated with respect? Everything, same thing as before. Um, so am I paid well enough, right? Can I live with am I happy with how much? So those basics for retention are exactly the same. I think it's the part around team building that is more difficult, much more difficult to do. And we've seen different approaches from different teams, but one conclusion is clear to me, which means you have to be paying even more attention now. So you have to set time aside. You have to set time aside for people to have the human interaction, not only the professional interaction, to talk about family and who's going to have a kid and when and how did that work and what happened to me yesterday and all of those. So you have to set time for that specifically. And many teams do it differently based on the people on the team and based on their styles. Some people start some many meetings, recurring meetings with 5 minutes of just whatever time just to talk. Some people set up time to play together, cool, funny team or collaborative games. Or
Does it feel natural though?
well, some I think it's different for everyone, right? For some people find it easier and fun, and some don't. But it's like if you go to a team building to Sinaya, or if you go for at the bar, there will be people who just don't enjoy drinking at the bar, and people who are going to have the fun of their life, right? So it's still the same. It really depends, and I think each team is based on the personalities of the team members and the leaders. Like in the team in Bucharest, right? There's like we have a pun master, right? And then the jokes are really bad. It is just when they when you make puns, they can't be like low level. They have to be like really bad, right? So then people are like, oh my god. So there's a new team value here. It's cringe, right? So and then like everybody started to do that, right? So because it's horrible. Or whenever we meet in somebody's birthday, like in the whole town hall, everybody sings happy birthday in their language, right? We call it the summoning of the demon, right? So because it's so bad and stupid and funny at the same time, right? So it's those things that make us different and create some culture. You have to set time aside for it, and it will happen naturally if you're at the office because everybody's personalities are gonna show. But in this situation, you just have to be mindful to understand that this is important. This time is important. You're human. We have to know each other and sometimes do silly stuff because we're also game developers. So it depends. But the only learning I can take is like it. You have to set time aside for it.
Well, I won't spend too much time because I think Dan explained it pretty well. Yeah, mic drop. I agree with pretty much everything he said. I think to me, we have to keep in mind that retention is a function of many factors, and some of them are completely unchanged. So, people being paid enough for the work they do, or being paid a fair salary, people doing fulfilling work, people having opportunities to grow and develop their skills, that kind of thing. People being respected, and that sounds might sound silly or a given, but it's not actually a given all over the place. I mean, respect comes in many forms. So there are these really important factors that go into retention, which I think are completely unchanged.
I don't believe that, for example, the salaries are a factor that is not changed, because when you can work for an
Sure.
employer or for I don't know what clients in Sweden is different than if you're doing it at home in Indonesia. So I think that's a factor that is going to be a problem for a lot of employers.
Sure, but it works both ways, right? I mean, you have access to other employees from around the world. So if we're moving to this kind of mindset, it's also
If there's one thing I learned, did they cut my mic now? If there's one thing I learned is like there are some people who want to work with an indie because that's what they like to do, right? And there are some people who like to go in a corporation and be part of a big project and do something that at scale. So
yeah, I may say a few words. Yeah. So first of all, I have no idea why those people keep coming back to the office. I don't know. So they must be enjoying something, or jokes aside, I think we work mainly with Romanians. All our colleagues are Romanians, and I think maybe the entrepreneurial spirit and will or willpower to go and find a remote job is not very strong with Romanians in general. So that's why many of us keep working for the corporations, I guess, and where the job is very good actually, and the projects are very cool. Just they're not indie, and maybe the creative freedom is not really there. I think it's the same as taking the step and being a freelancer is it's a step too far for most people. So even if they are working for an indie, and on paper there's not much difference from working for an indie in an office in Romania to finding a job with an indie or a corporation from abroad and a full remote job, most people don't want to bother with that. Also for us, I think it helps that we are doing a very cool game and it's very appreciated. Even though it's a niche game, so it's not for everyone, it's very, very appreciated. So you take a lot of pride, I think, in the impact you have with players and
Agreed.
the fun they have, and how much they write back and they talk, positively about your game. So that part is very, very fun, and I think people enjoy it. About the interpersonal part, I don't think we're very strong on that. But since we're a small team and most of the people in the team were friends with each other from before they were working for us, it works to our advantage and to their own advantage. It's a good climate for everybody. I personally like it in a sense more since we are remote. I'm not a smoker, and people used to go out for smoke breaks, and I wouldn't because I'm not smoking. I had to take, I don't know, it took a mental step that was too far for
You were
me.
actually the only one in the office who didn't.
Yeah, something like that. And now that, so I didn't take part in all maybe the gossip that was happening downstairs, right? And now that we're having our bull sessions at the start of the disco meets, I'm there too, and I can ask and tell and learn new stuff, and it's more fun. And I also noticed that since we are remote, maybe we take the time to actually meet for for lunch or for a party or something, and we are enjoying our each other's company much more than
Quality
before.
time.
Yeah, we're very happy to meet with each other. So I guess that says something about the whole environment, the people that work in the company, that we're all cool and whatever. But that's the end result. We enjoy it much more. We enjoy our own company.
Okay, thank you. I think that's important. And just one more thing that I would like to say on the subject is the use of Slack. What I've heard from what you guys are doing. I think it's really fun, and what I've experienced in Killhouse games is that the use of Slack extensively for banter and gossip and cool cool and funny things was very important for the team's morale and communication. We are way over our time. I don't even want to know how much. I'm sure that this is something that Catalin will have to discuss with me afterwards. But if there is one or two questions on remote work, or if there's something that you feel that's good that you've been doing and want to share with others, there's this time now or never. 5 seconds of fame, anyone? Sure.
What would you use, or why Slack and not Discord, or why Discord and not Slack?
I don't know, Slack. We don't even have a Discord server. I mean, we have one which is owned, I don't know, startup by some fans, and they invited us over. So maybe we don't feel we have so much control over it. So we don't have a private one. We just go there and have our video chats. Yeah, and Slack, it's I think it works better for us, to check for information, to have all the rooms, and be sure it's all private.
Unlimited file size sharing.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Slack for text, Discord for audio, Zoom for video.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Probably everybody who prefers remote work is at home.
I actually wanted to ask that. So how many of you work fully or almost fully remote now?
Oh.
That's and who works at the office, mostly at the office? Because I can't really figure out if it's like half or yeah, I think 60-40. The room toward it's skewed towards remote. Okay, thank you everyone.